Okay, so in this demo, I've given myself a section instead of a fire team. So I have 8 members, including myself, in my infantry section. What I'm going to go through is the different formations you can assign to your team. And right off the bat, if you go into the command view, the first option you have there is formation line, which you can assign. Actually, you can assign different formations apparently through this command interface. And I gave myself an infantry section so you can see the uh, effect that the formation has in a larger scale. So I'll tell them to form a diamond, and I'll tell them to form a wedge. There's a few ways of doing formation. One was you saw the command thing, and I could tell them to form a line. Um, the way I usually do it is using the number control 8, and then I can actually tell them to form whatever formation I want. Available formations are column, staggered column, wedge, echelon left, echelon right, V, line, column, which is a compact column, and then delta. The default formation is a wedge. Every time you start off, you'll have a wedge unless there's a waypoint where it states otherwise, uh, and that has to be your first waypoint. So the first uh, formation we'll discuss is the wedge formation. Essentially, the wedge formation is a line formation, but angled off at 45 degrees each way. Um, Basically, this is to have good frontal coverage, uh, line of fire, and also good coverage to the flanks. The reason the wedge is the default formation is because the wedge is generally a all-purpose formation. It's good coverage to the front and to the left and right flanks. Um, so basically anything 180 degrees within view of your squad would be detected and fired upon. And each member has a clear line of fire to that area. The only disadvantage is if anyone comes up behind you, then there's not really anyone looking behind you, and you'd have to actually turn your formation around and look behind you and engage. So that is the wedge formation. The next formation is the column formation, and the column formation is essentially a line, kind of like a follow the leader syndrome, if you will. Essentially, your AI just line themselves up in a line behind you. A column formation is good. All of the formations I'm going to talk about right now are regarding only infantry on foot. I'll also revisit formations next with term in regards to vehicles, but obviously the generalities are the same, although they have different applications. So the column formation is good for if you want to have fire to the left or the right flank of you. It's generally just a formation for movement, is what the column formation is. It's not really for a line of fire anywhere. But if you can see, some of your troops are looking in the left and right flanks, and generally you have a 360-degree coverage. You even have a rear guard, who is my number 8, and he is actually looking to the rear of the column, which is actually quite good. So the column formation is just for movement. And when you're moving as a team, you generally want to keep your profile low. So if you're moving in woods and things and you want to be kind of sneaky, a column formation is a good formation to keep because it doesn't really spread your formation out widthwise, but lengthwise in terms of like the height of the formation or the length of the formation. It takes the width of the formation basically and changes it to a length of a formation. And actually, as you can see, or actually as I can hear, the the bad guys have actually from the town wandered in and attacked the squad near that river that I was commanding earlier. So that's the column formation. The next formation is the staggered column. And when you're giving these formation orders, you don't have to select any troops. It will do it. These formations only apply to the squad in general, entire squad. So staggered column is essentially a column, however staggered. Uh, Staggered in the sense that instead of there being one row of soldiers, there is now 2 rows of soldiers. A staggered column is also a good formation to have. Again, you don't have that smaller profile in terms of the width of the formation being smaller, because it's a little bit more spread out now, but you don't have as long as a depth into the formation as, say, the column. As you notice, the column gets extended rather lengthily. See? Whereas the staggered column, the formation kind of loses its depth and increases its width a little bit. You don't really notice it too well, but it does. The next, you'd pretty much want to use a staggered column in the same situations you'd want to use a column, is essentially what that would be. I'd probably be more apt to using a staggered column personally than just using a column, just because of the spacing is, for one, very important. You don't want one grenade to come and knock out 3 or 4 people. So a staggered column is good for maintaining adequate spacing. Alright, the next formation is a echelon left formation. And an echelon left formation is essentially the AI will move towards my left as the squad leader, and they'll just create like a diagonal line formation at 45 degrees. So echelon left formation, basically you have good coverage to your left flank. Echelon right is basically the opposite of echelon left. They'll go to your right flank, so they'll move over to my right, but still be orientated the same. As you can see, there is still a good length of people, and the spacing is okay. And also, they are the width of the formation is a lot wider than the other formations we've seen. So essentially, the echelon left formation is to protect your left flank. The echelon right formation is the opposite, and the echelon right formation protects your right flank. And as I'm talking right now, actually the AI from that village is engaging, or is being engaged by the AI that I was in command of earlier, the AI's fire team. So hopefully none of that comes over my way while I'm doing this demo, but if it does, I'll continue. Right, so echelon right formation, they basically protect your right flank. It's the opposite of the echelon left. When would you want to use an echelon formation? Well, basically, if you're concerned about your flank more than you are your frontal area, say if you're moving to flank the enemy, or if you're moving diagonally towards a target, then you would want to use an echelon formation to keep all your men facing towards the area of threat. Essentially, your right flank or your left flank would want to be covered. The next formation is a V formation. And essentially a V formation is the opposite of a wedge formation. It's like a inverted wedge. So basically, instead of you leading by being in the front, you're leading by being in the back now, and all your AI teammates are now in the front. And the point men are the people who are who would be the end of the wedge, are now the front. When would you want to use a formation like this? I don't really know, to be honest. I would guess probably the use of this formation would be the same as the use of a wedge, just the um, orientation of the wedge is different. So instead of me being out to the front, I mean, the only difference really is instead of me as a leader being out to the front, I'm more to the rear. And in a way, that adds additional protection towards me rather than being the point man. So that may be why you might want to use a formation like this. The next formation is the line formation. And the line formation is essentially just a column, but instead of it being in depth, it's in width. So now your forces are basically spread out width-wise, and this is as wide as the formation can possibly get. This formation is basically used for a head-on frontal assault towards the enemy. You have basically no protection to your flanks, no protection to your rear, and all of your firepower and your attention is focused to the front of the formation. When would you want to use this formation? Basically in any frontal assault type of situation. When you want to lay down a line of fire with all your firepower available. So moving on, the next formation is a column again, but this is a compact column. The compact column, which actually is called a file by my squad leader talking, is basically a more compact version of a column. It's essentially, the way I can think of it is as though your men are stacking up on you. Like if you're about to make entry somewhere, they're stacking up on you. This type of formation would be good, I think, for a close quarters combat situation, but in a fire team rather than, say, a squad scenario. So if I put a 2-man fire team or a 4-man fire team, it would be more useful for that. Essentially, the biggest problem is that it's a column, but now the column, as it was compact before, it's even more compact, and now you open yourself more towards threat of grenade knocking everyone out. So the next formation is a delta. And essentially, a delta is a formation where you have 360-degree coverage in the formation. Essentially, everyone is looking everywhere, is what it is. Again, the delta formation is not really that useful for a large group such as what I'm leading right now, which is a squad or a infantry section, but is more useful for a small group of, say, a 4-man fire team. A 4-man fire team, the delta would be very useful for, but a larger section, infantry section, would be not as useful, I would say. This is a good CQB formation to have. As you can see, these 4 men here would form a diamond, and you'd have a 360-degree coverage. The leader, which would be me, would be covering the front flank. The right flank and left flank would be covered by another soldier, and the rear flank would be covered by the rear guard, who in this case would be my number 4, which would be the automatic rifleman. So this would be a good CQB formation. It's not as compact. As you can see, there's still some spacing, but it is a pretty compact formation as well. So the column, which is compact, and the delta kind of go hand in hand with each other as far as its usage. So in terms of formation, when in regards to infantry section, that's pretty much the gist of it. I'm going to now go ahead and go to a vehicle group of vehicles. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the formation in regards to vehicle and its usages, because vehicles and infantry are 2 different things, although there's similarities. But so what I am in command of right now is a warrior infantry fighting vehicle platoon. And as you can see, we're in a default wedge formation. That's again the default even for vehicles. It's the default for me for any group. So what I'll go ahead and do is command them to form a column. And they'll go ahead and form a column. Now for vehicles, it takes them longer to form up into formation than it does for infantry because simply of the fact that um, they are not as agile as infantry, I guess. Well, they are faster, but... So here we go, we formed the column. Essentially, we have some spacing in between each unit. And the compact column, which I'll show you later on momentarily, is going to have less spacing in between units. So that's the column. Here's the staggered column. And the staggered column will be essentially a column but staggered, and instead of one row, it'll be about 2 rows. So that's the staggered column. We'll now form a echelon left. And you'll see I'm in command of 4 warrior IFVs, but there's 3 crew members in each warrior. And with 3 crew members in each warrior, 4 times 3, that's 12. So I'm in command of 12 soldiers, basically 12 crewmen. Uh, so this is an echelon left formation, and then here's an echelon right. Essentially, that's the opposite of the left, and the V again, opposite of the column. I'm sorry, of the wedge. A lot of these formations, they're basically the same usage with vehicles, with the respect of the column and the column compact. Those are the ones you really want to use if you're going to have like a vehicle following each other on the road, because they'll maintain their position on the roadway. So here we have the V and the line. Mainly you want to use a column formation or a line formation or a wedge formation with vehicles. The best formations to use would be obviously the column and the line. The line would be very good because, as you can see, I have 4 warrior IFVs with a lot of firepower pointed towards the front of this formation. So all of our focus is towards the front. So if we have a pretty good chance of enemy contact at the front, and we know our flanks are clear, we can rain down a lot of firepower on them versus in other formations. So the line formation is quite useful for vehicles also. Here's the compact column, and essentially it's similar to the column, except the spacing with vehicles is a lot less. Basically, there's minimal spacing in between vehicles. So here's the compact column for a vehicle. For vehicles, actually, it's pretty good to have a tight kind of convoy formation with the compact column. But if you're concerned about them hitting each other because of their spacing, and the AI does hit each other quite a bit, you can increase their spacing by telling them to form a column. Likewise, if you're fairly certain you're not going to come under contact and you just want to have your vehicles closer together, you can issue the compact column. And the delta, you'll see the usefulness of the delta in this group versus the group I was in last with the infantry section, because there's 4 units here I'm commanding, including my own as the leader. The delta formation is basically good for all-around protection, 360 degree. So basically, I'm looking to the front. This warrior IFV is looking to the left. This one is looking to the right. And for some reason, this one's looking to the front also, but really he should be looking to the rear. Perhaps if I start moving. And while you move also, the formation will be kept. So, and the diamond is also or the delta is also a compact formation to keep also. Same with the infantry section that you observed earlier. So in terms of formation, that's about it for vehicles. If you have vehicles grouped with infantry, you definitely want to have them in a line formation, because what happens is the hierarchy of the formation, the infantry will hang back with the vehicle versus being with the vehicle. Or you want to separate the vehicles in different teams. And actually that's the next covering point I'm going to have. The next point I'm going to cover is team submenu, which is next.